More promises, not a treaty, likely a climate summit. For 20 years, as this crowded planet grew warmer, nations have gathered annually to try to do something about it. History now brings them to this chilly northern capital and to a crossroads. Decision time. The world looks to Copenhagen to witness what I believe will be an historic turning point in the fight against climate change, said the United Nations organizer. It may witness, instead, history put on hold. The change in U.S. administrations a year ago had aroused hopes the long-running climate talks might finally produce an all-encompassing package in 2009 to combat global warming and help its victims. Too little time and too little agreement, however, especially between rich and poor countries, could mean that the 192-nation Copenhagen Conference is likely to produce, at best, a framework, a basis for continuing talks and signing internationally binding final agreements, perhaps next year. Two key building blocks for that framework may take shape here. Setting targets for controlling emissions of carbon dioxide and other global warming gases, including by the leading largest contributors, China and the United States, agreeing on how much rich countries should pay for poor nations' clean energy technology, and for seawalls, irrigation, and other projects to counter a changing climate. Under the grand roof of Copenhagen's modern Bella Center, delegates will also deal with a heavy agenda of other issues: the technicalities of protecting forests, measuring emissions, setting rules for carbon credits, enforcing an eventual treaty, and other concerns. Underlining Copenhagen's importance, at least 100 national leaders, led by President Barack Obama, will converge on the Danish capital to offer high-level backing to the talks. On Friday, the White House announced Obama would come to Copenhagen on December 18th, the conference's last scheduled day. That's when the United Nations talks perennially go into overtime and last-minute wrangling, and when other leaders are planning to take part. The U.S. chief executive's change in plans indicated the Americans see a chance for important political agreements in those final hours. Talks started with 1992 Rio Treaty. Slow progress has marked climate talks since the 1992 Rio Treaty, calling for voluntary controls on greenhouse gases. It took 5 more years to get to the Kyoto Protocol, which ordered emissions cuts by 37 industrialized nations, an accord the U.S. rejected. American resistance, through 8 years under President George W. Bush, then blocked most progress. While diplomacy has inched along, climate change hasn't waited. Global temperatures are rising by at least 0.19 degrees Celsius, or 0.34 degrees Fahrenheit per decade, and twice as fast in the far north, melting Arctic sea ice at record rates. In the Copenhagen talks' final days, the World Meteorological Organization is expected to confirm this was the warmest decade on record. Oceans expanding from warmth and melting glaciers are rising faster than predicted. The world's power plants, automobiles, burning forests, and other sources are producing 29% more carbon dioxide than in the year 2000. Not in 2 million years. has so much CO2 built up in the atmosphere, says the Global Carbon Project, an international research group. That emissions path could drive temperatures in the next few decades to at least 4 degrees Celsius, 7 degrees Fahrenheit higher than pre-industrial levels, scientists say. That would push the world deeper into a time of climate disruption, unusual droughts and powerful storms, species die-offs, spreading tropical diseases, coastal flooding, and other unpredictable consequences. From the Arctic, from threatened Pacific islands, from industrial capitals, it's that fear that's bringing 15,000 delegates, environmentalists, business lobbyists, scientists, journalists, and many others to this quiet gray city of parks and bicycling commuters. It will also draw hundreds of police reinforcements and protesters, activists demanding climate justice, deeper emissions cuts by the wealthy, whose smokestacks first overloaded the skies with greenhouse gases, and richer compensation for poorer nations. Many scientists want deeper cuts. The emissions cuts offered this time around, to follow Kyoto reductions expiring in 2012, have disappointed many scientists and poorer nations facing damaging climate change. They say greenhouse gases by 2020 must be reduced by 25 to 40% below 1990 output. That would keep temperatures in the less dangerous range of 2 degrees Celsius, 3.6 degrees Fahrenheit, above pre-industrial levels, they say. Any way you look at it, though, it's going to cost a lot of money. The European Union approaches that target, pledging to cut emissions by 20% below 1990 levels, and more if others agree. Awaiting U.S. congressional action, however, the Obama administration could make only a provisional offer of a 17% reduction by 2020, compared with a different baseline year, 2005. Against 1990, that represents only a 3 to 4% cut, experts say. The developing world, for the first time, is offering its own actions. Not straight reductions, but clean energy projects and other steps to slow the growth of their emissions. China says it will, theoretically, by 2020, reduce gases by 40 to 45% below business as usual. That is, judged against 2005 figures for energy used versus economic output. India offers a 20 to 25% slowdown in emissions growth. An analysis by European research organizations found the industrialized nations' targets together amount to only 8 to 12% below 1990 levels, far, far short of what scientists urge. This track would produce global warming of well over 3 degrees Celsius, 5.4 degrees Fahrenheit, in this century, it said. Behind the Bella Center's closed doors, richer nations will be pressed to raise their bids on financing. That pressure is already felt in Washington, where appropriations moving through Congress would extend little more than just $1 billion next year. And it's going to take a whole lot more than that. I think the United States needs to come up with at least $2.5 or $3 billion to put on the table for an immediate jump start, reporters were told last week by U.S. Senator John Kerry. Beyond the jump start, the developing world will seek assurances about long-term financing, a framework of stable sources for many billions or perhaps even trillions of dollars more. Finally, Rich and poor will argue over the legal structure of an eventual deal, as poor nations resist any effort to bind them legally and subject them to close scrutiny as they pursue greener economies. And again, there's something much more, something much bigger going on here. These are more signs of the end times, transition days. The transition is a continuing, ongoing process happening daily all around the world.